Hello, welcome to tonight's Travel Talk, Iceland with Dr. Anita Grunder. My name is Kate Sanders, and I am the Director of Alumni Programs and Alumni Group Travel at the OSU Alumni Association. We are excited to have you to join us tonight. This Travel Talk webcast series is a way to highlight OSU's connections to where we travel in our alumni group program. Tonight, we are showcasing Iceland's geology and volcanology with a shout out to OSU researchers, including tonight's speaker, Dr. Anita Grunder. This program will be recorded for future viewing, and it'll be at our website at fororegonstate.org/travel talks. If you have a question during the talk, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We are reserving time for questions at the end, but you are welcome to ask them at any point during the presentation. At the end of the talk, Anita is going to walk us through how to make an Arctic hotspot, an Iceland-inspired cocktail mixed with a little geology, and I will give a short preview on 2 tours to Iceland in 2022. If you would like to make an Arctic hotspot with Anita, you will need a clear martini glass, that's just so you can see the geology in action, grenadine or red raspberry syrup, either one, blue kokoro or triple sec with a drop. You could use triple sec with a drop of blue food coloring if you don't have the other. Vodka, you can use an Icelandic vodka of choice if you would like. And ice, but of course, keep that ice in the freezer for now. Now, a little bit about our speaker, Dr. Grunder. Anita is a professor emerita in geology with the College of Earth, Oceans, and Atmospheric Sciences. She received her undergrad degree from Berkeley and a PhD from Stanford. She started at OSU as an assistant professor and retired as Associate Dean of Academic Programs in the College of Earth, Oceans, and Atmospheric Sciences. During her 35 years of service to OSU, she received 2 college-level and 1 national teaching award. She retired 2 years ago and has remained engaged in research and with alumni activities. Among her passions are education in the field of international travel, which sparked a tradition of international field trips with the Geo Club. Welcome, Anita.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Well, not only is Anita an expert geologist and volcanologist, but she has also spent some time in Iceland. Tonight, she's going to lead the discussion on examining dramatic landscapes, including volcanoes, geysers, hot springs, and lava fields, discussing the active volcanic eruption of Iceland, sharing the offshore geologic work by international teams, including OSU researchers. And at the end of the talk, as I briefly mentioned, I'm going to do the overview of those 2022 tours, exploring Iceland with Odysseys Unlimited, and then a Vikings Vistas and Views cruise that stops in Iceland, as well as Greenland, Denmark, Scotland, and Norway. But for now, it's time for Anita to take us to Iceland.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is great. I am going to try and share my screen now. Great. And get the highlighter. Did we do it? Yep. All right. Hello, as they say in Icelandic. Ég heiti Anita Hermannsdóttir. That is to say, my name is Anita Hermannsdóttir. That is to say Grunder, but in Iceland, they use the patronymic. Iceland here, up here, Íslandi, the land of ice and fire. And there, the population is around 350,000. And of course, it was much smaller before. And people knew each other. And basically, your last name was Dóttir if you're the girl, or son if you're the boy, and named for your father, or if the father was unknown, the mother. So I could have been Lucian's daughter, but I know who my dad is, I think. Anyway, where were we? You'll see here that the volcanoes, the big volcanoes shown in red, lie in the rift zone of Iceland, where there's a southwest and a southeast rift zone. And we'll talk a little bit about why there's a rift zone in a minute, but lots of volcanoes, and there is the remains of a big ice cap used to cover the whole island. So truly the land of ice and fire. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit about how this plays into the energy budget and basically green energy in Iceland. So for those going on the trip, and for those who might someday go on a trip, here's a little set of postcards to give you an idea. The tour will go from Reykjavik, where you land, around the island up to here, and then fly back to Reykjavik. And there are lots of beautiful things to be seen and lots of interesting things to be seen. A geothermal power plant, lots of gorgeous waterfalls, Selfoss, at the end, Goðafoss and the nearby geyser. Lots of bird life that you'll see on the cruise that goes out of here. And you'll be going to Thingvellir, which is where the Althing, the old parliament, used to meet. And it's interesting to know that it is the oldest democracy in Europe. In fact, well, excluding, of course, the Greeks, who had city democracies. But as a country, it's the oldest democracy on the planet, starting in 930, where they had these parliamentary meetings here at Althing, where you will go because it has geological interest also. And just saying, for a while, Iceland was part of the Kingdom of Norway, so lost its independence and then regained it later. First Norway, then Denmark, and then back to independence. So just being Swiss myself, we became a democracy in 1291 and have been that since. So just saying, continuous democracy or not. And then lastly, just a nice picture here of Reykjavik, where it is 100% heated by geothermal energy, which is an easy and interesting goal in Iceland because of all those volcanoes and all that water. So just to let you know, Iceland's about 103 square kilometer island, meaning that it is a little bit larger than Ireland, and therefore the second largest after England in Europe. It's about 10% covered by ice, but it was, of course, fully covered by ice during the Pleistocene. And it has been covered in beavers, as you see here, doing all kinds of interesting things. And this is just a small sampling of all the interesting work that's going on. So from monitoring whaling by looking at whale DNA, who's been poaching whales and who's not, an alumnus who teaches open geology field classes, people studying how the ridge, this rift area, has jumped in time, people who are doing study abroad, diving on the mid-Atlantic ridge, looking at hydrothermal communities that live off of basically Earth's heat energy rather than off of sunlight. The age of magnetic reversals, work by Bob Duncan, because these lava flows come out and you can date them, and occasionally the Earth changes its magnetic direction, so we can actually date that magnetic reversal business. So it's just a lot of really interesting work that's been going on in Iceland in geology, biology, all kinds of things. So what about the Hjálpræði, I hear you say? What the heck is Hjálpræði? That is the Icelandic word for geology. Who knew? And I want to cover a little bit on tectonic setting, mostly on volcanoes, a shout out to glaciers, touching on hazards, and then we'll close with a piece on energy. So here we have a view of the setting of Iceland here. And it is on the mid-Atlantic ridge. So the Atlantic is being split down the middle with new crust forming that makes the North American plate moving off towards North America that way, and off to the southeast to Eurasia, so off to England. And you can see that this is one place, in fact, it is the only place in the world where a mid-Atlantic ridge comes onto land where you can actually see it at the surface. So this topography shown in the shaded colors shows that there's really a big lump of material here, unlike on the rest of the ridge. And so one asks oneself the question, why is this sticking out of the water? So before I address that, I just want to add a little quirky fact here. I was saying how Iceland is larger than Ireland, which is right here. And why do I pick out Ireland? Well, because it's pretty big, but also because it turns out that the mitochondrial DNA of the Icelandic population is divided broadly in two. The men have mitochondrial DNA, that is their mother's DNA, that is basically Norwegian, Scandinavian. But the women have mitochondrial DNA that comes from Ireland. So you inherit all your mitochondrial DNA from your mother. So how is it that these male Vikings have these women who pass on their mitochondrial DNA to their daughters and their sons, who then don't pass it on? So it's because basically the Vikings had Gaelic slaves, and the women Gaelic slaves passed on their DNA, mitochondrial DNA. So that's just a little interesting highlight about the Gaelic, the Irish versus Icelandic link. So back to the geology. Underneath Iceland, not only do we have this ridge that is tearing the land apart and making new crust because the mantle is welling up underneath, and as it decompresses, it makes basalt magma, which comes to the surface and makes new land, or underwater makes new crust. And here we have just a whole lot of magma coming to the surface because it is also underlain by what we call a hot spot. So that's basically a fixed place on Earth where from deep, probably the core mantle boundary, there is a hot upwelling, which as it decompresses, as it comes to near the surface, also makes basalt magma and adds to the activity here. So this hot spot has been imaged. This is a 1997 cover of Nature magazine. And you can see this region here is an area that is thought to be anomalously warm compared to the mantle around it. And it's underneath Iceland. Here's Iceland, and then you can see the Grimsvötn ice cap there in white. So coming up underneath Iceland is this big finger of hot coming up from the mantle. And it's basically imaged using, it's like a CT scan, except we're using seismic waves that image the velocity, and it goes slower through hot material compared to X-rays that you use to image bodies. But you can get a three-dimensional picture of what's going on in the mantle. So very cool work that shows that there's a hot spot under Iceland. So along the rift, where basically Iceland is being pulled apart, you have here a picture from Thingvellir, which is the mid-Atlantic rift on land, and you can walk along it, and you can walk along the path, and you're in Eurasia on one side and on North America on the other side. Turning now to the volcanoes that are along this rift, you can see here's the Southwest Rift and the Southeast Rift that cross, and there's this big transformed region across there, and basically the hot spot is centered underneath this transformed region. And the biggest volcanoes are also around here. You can see the central volcanoes in yellow, and they are they have the calderas are in yellow, the central volcanoes in orange that host the calderas, and then they have fissure swarms that are along these faults that open as the crust cracks open and fills with new basalts that come to the surface. So we see here, I just want to run through a few of these eruptions, but certainly in red, all these basalt fissure eruptions you can see are very much along the rift. So this is the making of the new crust in Iceland. And from youngest to older, I'm not going to go through obviously all of these, but right now active is Fagradalsfjall, which is started in March and is going on, and it's been the longest running eruption in 50 years. It's so far a simple fissure eruption, and you've probably seen pictures of it on the news. But these are very benign eruptions in the sense that they don't flow terribly fast. You can run away from them, and people go out and roast their hot dogs over the edges of the flows. So in March of 2010, and they don't always erupt in March, as you will see, there was an eruption at Eyjafjallajökull, which is a subglacial volcano. Eyjafjall is the volcano part. Jökull means glacier. And that one was both a fissure and to a caldera forming eruption. And because it was subglacial, it was much more explosive. So the hazards associated with this are quite a bit more, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Hekla in 2000 was a big fissure eruption, and it is the most active of the volcanoes in Iceland. It's going off every decade or so. Heimaey, which is offshore here, off this rift here in the ocean, is an island that was a fishing port, and it had a big eruption in 1973, and there was some interesting hazard mitigation there that I'll talk about a little bit. And then Surtsey erupted in 1963. It's shown here. It was in fact completely submarine. Nobody knew that it was even there. So it's on the mid-ocean ridge. And it started off with sort of boiling water and dead fish coming to the surface, and then steam jets, and then eventually black ash, and then it finally piled up into an island. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then, uncertain when this erupted, but Snæfellsjökull, and who can guess why that's an important volcano? It's not active now. Think about it, do a little reading. Jules Verne. Yep, this is where they went, right here, where they went into the center of the earth. And why they did this at a spreading center instead of the subduction zone, I don't know. Maybe he didn't do his Geo 101 before he wrote the book. They came up in a convergence zone down at Stromboli, but they went in up here at a divergent zone in Iceland. So a land of lore. Here is a picture of fairly recent, about a month and a half ago at Fagradalsfjall, which, like I said, is a pretty benign eruption. It's along a several kilometer long fissure, and those big curtains of fire, like you've probably seen from Hawaiian eruptions, collapse down to single vent kind of feeders. And here we see this vent feeding these beautiful lava flows and making these crusts, and it makes this fairly smooth lava that we call pahoehoe lava, which is a word used from the Hawaiian. And you'll find that the volcano literature is absolutely full of international words from volcano producing islands. And I'll mention a few of the Icelandic words that we have incorporated into volcanology as we go along. So going on to the Heimaey eruption of 1973, which made a new little volcano called Eldfell volcano. You can see here the town of Heimaey, and it still is an important fishing port. Fishing is one of the important industries in Iceland. And as an aside, it started in the cod fisheries, which in itself is a super interesting story, and also herring. Herring have pretty much collapsed, and cod is getting there. So there are sustainability issues around the fisheries industry that are worthy of a talk another day. But here we have an important fishing port, and this lava came down, and we have here lava. It's all clinkery and difficult to walk on, a Hawaiian word probably for the sounds you make when you walk on spiny, nasty lava. You go, well, you know, Anyway, so we have here this harbor, and this lava was basically threatening to cut off the channel so that their harbor would be useless. And the town was very distressed. And so what they did, and the US military helped them, they got these big firefighting boats, and they pumped seawater and basically hardened, cooled the leading edge of the lava enough that it sort of redirected it and went out this way instead of more that way. And now they have a better harbor than ever. So then Surtsey, that next one down, that's now offshore. So we're going from onshore to offshore volcanism. And this one, like I was saying, basically came up as a surprise in 1963. It started in 1964. My parents were returning from Europe to the US, and we flew over it, and that I saw my first live volcano on that trip as a kid looking out the window. And here you can see that the water interacting with the magma has caused basically a big cinder cone to pile up. So all the magma is fragmented. So we have an interaction of water and magma that makes it very explosive and makes little tiny pieces, which nowadays we call phreatomagmatic. But this is a picture from not so long ago, descriptions of volcanic types. And we call this kind of interaction Surtzeyan, named for Surtsey volcano. You can see here Strombolian is a name, named for Stromboli, and so on. Plinian, named for Pliny, who got wiped out at Vesuvius. So again, the volcanology language reflects some of the history, and here we have a piece of history about Surtsey. This stuff that's coming out we call tephra, things that are erupted from magma, particularly the particulate material, and that is an Icelandic term for pieces. And turning now to a really much more explosive eruption, the Eyjafjallajökull eruption. People just call it Aya for short, for reasons you might understand. And here, the big deal is that when you add water to magma, it just becomes much more explosive. And that water could be ocean water, could be groundwater, could be glacial. And when you do that, you get these big eruption plumes. And here you can see the eruption plume as sort of a west is up. So this is headed to the east. This plume that's 24,000 feet tall. Oops, sorry, wrong slide. Got to keep going. Oops. Here, this plume is 24,000 feet tall, headed to Europe, and became an enormous aviation hazard. So this is one of the parts of Europe that early on got shut down to air traffic, and then this area then broadened out quite a bit in time, and then once it settled down, they could open up air traffic again. But a number of people were trapped for basically several days in airports waiting for a way out because these particles, this tephra that comes out, is very hard on engines. So particularly the jet engine. First of all, here's a picture of a plane. You can see the big plume here and all the ash that shoots out and goes downwind. It goes way up into the stratosphere. And then here we have the abrasion on all the leading edges of the plane that compromise it to some degree. But what's really bad is that the ash goes into the engine, and as it goes in, not only does it abrade, but it actually melts and starts coating the turbines. And there was a big DC, whatever it was, a big transport plane in Alaska, what was it, maybe 7 years ago? It was a KLM flight that lost all of its engines on one side because of the ash from Redoubt volcano. So these things are very dangerous, and much of the US hazard money, particularly for Alaska, is spent on monitoring for aviation hazard. Here is a picture of what glass looks like. That little bar there is 50 microns, so little tiny fragments, but you can imagine that these they're basically frozen magma. They're glass, and they're very abrasive. If you get them in your lungs, it's horrible. So the volcanic ash hazards are, first of all, very difficult to breathe. Need to have that handy COVID mask at all times. Lung damage. If you have repeated exposure, you can get silicosis, though these are not typically the shape of fragments that cause silicosis. Plants obviously can be suffocated because they get buried. It's toxic to grazers because often there is fluorine gas attached to these fragments, and that causes fluorosis, which then damages the bones in cattle and sheep and whatever, also people. The problem with engines, both choking the filters and this business of jet engines actually remelting the glass. And then the ash goes way up into the stratosphere and it blocks sunlight. And that can cause global cooling of up to a couple of degrees. And you may remember after the 1991 eruption of Pinatubo, basically in the Northern Hemisphere, we had no summer. It was cool, it was rainy, and that was basically due to the residual particulate material in the stratosphere from that eruption. Volcanic gas, of course, is also dispersed in these large eruption columns. SO2, which is one of them, which can also contribute to global cooling, I should add. It certainly affects breathing. If you get acid, either hydrofluoric or sulfuric acid into your lungs, it can cause great damage. Plants get burnt by the rain that picks up the gas that then makes like sulfuric acid. And in the Laki eruption, which was 1793 in Iceland, that was the largest historic basalt flow eruption known, not as big as a flood basalt like the Columbia River basalts, but substantial. I think it was 10 plus cubic kilometers of magma, which is a lot. I might have that wrong, so don't quote me, but a huge volume of magma that came out, and the acid rain and the tephra from that caused about 9,000 dead. You know, these are lava flows you can physically walk away from, but their effects are lasting in other ways. So there was a famine, half the cattle died, a third of the sheep, a bunch of the horses. And there was famine all across Northern Europe for several years thereafter. So very, very difficult time. And then Eyjafjallajökull also is a nice demonstration of another kind of volcanic hazard that you might not immediately think of, but because it came up under ice, it melts the overlying ice cap and makes basically a trapped lake. And when that lake gets large enough, it can float the ice and then it catastrophically drains, like a mini version of the Missoula floods, for those of you who are familiar with that story. Well, with that comes catastrophic discharge of all the subglacial fine-grained ground up material, as well as large chunks, and it goes roaring down the valleys. And here's the flow direction. This is the edge of a plain. You're looking down onto the Jökulálp that came out of Eyjafjallajökull. So a Jökulálp is a glacial outburst flood. And so there's a word we borrow from Icelandic in volcanology again. And here's a Vatnajökull, which is the big ice cap, and one of the Skeiðarárjökull is known for its Jökulálps that have made this big plain here, and it's constantly wiping out the road that goes around Iceland. These Jökulálps, they have to replace them. There's various mitigation ways, but mostly they just have to rebuild those roads. And I think it's about 15 years ago, a couple of Japanese volcanologists were taken by surprise and were killed in one of these Jökulálps. All right, so death and destruction in various ways. And you've learned that if you add water to an eruption, it makes it more explosive. What is the practical side of having volcanoes and glaciers around? And that is basically that Iceland is a poster child for green energy. We have geothermal tapping all these this water saturated ground that makes beautiful hot springs and whatnot. And basically every village in Iceland has a public pool that's full of hot water where you can go and for like 50 cents have yourself a bath. This is tapped, this energy is tapped for all the heating of homes and businesses, and also a bunch of greenhouses where tomatoes and all kinds of things can be grown in an otherwise hostile climate. And then the ice caps themselves, here's Vatnajökull, one of the big ice caps. The water that comes off of that can be trapped in dams, which then go to a power station and make a lot of electricity. And you're going, well, why does Iceland need more electricity when they obviously have plenty of geothermal to do their work? And it turns out it's because this cheap source of energy goes into, feeds basically smelters. And the production of aluminum is a very energy intensive process. And Iceland, having abundant energy, is a place where one can use that energy to make aluminum. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that just in one more slide. Fossil fuels are used for transportation because it's hard to trap these kinds of energies to and now with electric cars, maybe we can for driving around and for fishing on boats. And you can see here, these are some of the coins of Iceland, and you can see they all have basically fish motifs, which reflecting the importance of fishing to the country. All right, so Iceland basically exports its energy in the way of aluminum. And this is the story. Bauxite, which is aluminum ore, aluminum hydroxy, whatever it is, you can read it yourself, H2O4. Basically, these are the big bauxite deposits of the world. And you can see that they are around the equator. And basically what bauxite is it's extremely heavily weathered soils that have lost everything but the most refractory components, which is basically the aluminum and then the water bonded to that aluminum. So there's basically two aluminums with two waters bonded to it. So that occurs in tropical settings. So here are big bauxite deposits in Australia, and they get shipped. This bauxite gets shipped all the way up here to Iceland. And if it's summertime and the ice is clear, you can actually also ship it through the Arctic route. And that is, of course, with global warming becoming more accessible. So bauxite gets shipped to Iceland to get turned into aluminum, which then gets shipped around the world to make, various aluminum things. We all have window frames and cans and so on and so forth. So very interesting story. And it's a big controversy because it's pretty environmentally unfriendly. Shipping is cheap, but it uses a lot of fossil fuels, and the production of aluminum produces a lot of CO2. All right, so then just to close, Iceland is in fact Arctic. It's only barely though. Here's the Arctic Circle. And the northernmost island, well, not the northernmost. Yeah, actually it is, has to be. It's north of the Arctic Circle here is Grimsey Island. The Arctic Circle runs right through it. And on the Arctic Circle, they put this big concrete ball. You're going, why would you put a concrete ball there? And the reason is there's a big hole through the middle and you can put a chain through it and you can pull this ball with a tractor because the Arctic Circle, in fact, moves. It's moving about 15 meters a year to the north. As the tilt of the Earth relative to the sun changes a little bit, the position of the Arctic Circle, which is where you get 24 hours of daylight, actually moves. So there's a quirky little fact about Iceland. So it is, in fact, Arctic, but only barely so, and becoming less so with the present Earth tilting. So Iceland. Thank you for paying attention to this. I hope you got a little flavor for the volcanology and all the beautiful landscapes in Iceland. Here's a picture done by Dana Johnson, a colleague of mine at University of Oregon, of that ball that's on the Arctic Circle. And I would like now to invite you and my able assistant Desiree Rathall to make an Arctic hotspot, a drink that should make us all very jolly.
This has been such a great talk, Anita. While Des and Anita are getting ready for their Arctic hotspot, I just want to remind folks that please do type in any questions you have for Anita into the Q&A box. We're monitoring that right now, and we can go ahead and ask Anita your questions as they are getting ready. And then you'll be able to know what the recipe is for this Arctic hotspot too. That was great. All right, I think we have one question coming in. Gordy says that was an excellent presentation and thank you very much.
You're ever so welcome. I looked up how to say thank you, but I didn't look up how to say you're welcome.
Great. Okay. And then are there any metamorphic or sedimentary rocks in Iceland? Is another question from Theo.
Yes, there are. The sedimentary rocks are basically the beaches, the tephra that gets reworked and deposited in rivers. And so we have, all of those deposits, but they are much subordinate to the lava cover. As to metamorphic rocks, well, yes, if you bury those things and goes down deep, you would make them change their shape, which was what metamorphic means. Meta, change, morph, shape. But there's not really that much burial going on except by the lavas themselves. So the metamorphism there is a little bit special. It's mostly related to the deep circulation of water, of hot water, which then changes the chemistry of the rocks, which then recrystallize to make really curious, what we would really call metasomatic change in chemistry rocks. So yeah, there are deep processes that change the rocks from the basalts to, eclogite or whatever at very deep, but not so, it's more the hydrothermal deep circulation that matters.
Great. We are just getting a ton of comments coming in, so we'll go through some of these here. One question is, are there other examples of hotspots on the spreading plate?
Yes and no. The one that comes to mind is Tristan da Cunha, which is in the South Atlantic. It has now drifted off of the ridge, but it did used to be on the ridge. So that would be one. And as these hot spots, as the plates move over them, they will burn a trail, create a trail of islands like we see in Hawaii. So Tristan da Cunha now is making a trail of islands since it's off of its ridge. But that would be an example of an on-ridge hotspot.
Great. So Laura wanted to know if you can see the northern lights, and I can answer that one. Yes, you can. At the right time of year, you can see the northern lights in Iceland. There's actually trips that.
I might add to that. There is not only an Arctic Circle that's geographic, but there's an Arctic Circle that's magnetic. And Iceland is very much under the magnetic Arctic Circle. And that is the place where the northern lights are best. So yeah, it has extraordinary lights.
Oh, that's great. So how does Icelandic basalt compare or not compare to Oregon basalt? And he continues to say, great talk from a 1974 grad. Yeah.
Okay, so a quirky fact is that Iceland basalt looks like mid-ocean ridge basalt with maybe a little bit of an enrichment in alkalis like sodium because it also has the hotspot signature. But it's mostly like a mid-ocean ridge basalt. And we call them tholiites, low potassium tholiites. Which is Tholi is an Icelandic volcano. So it's actually named for Iceland, that whole basalt type. And it turns out that in Eastern Oregon, where I've done quite a lot of work, those are all very Icelandic looking tholiites. The Cascades basalts, not so much. They're a subduction-like basalt, but we do have behind the Cascades in the northern basin range, we have Icelandic basalts.
Great. We had another question of wondering why the fishing industry is declining. Do you have something quick on that?
Yeah, overfishing, that's the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look,
there you
as
go.
we're humans, right? The better our technology, the more we fish. And yeah, there's a lot to say on that, but that's the answer.
Great. What precious stones are mined in Iceland? Basalt
is precious to me, but yeah, you wouldn't want to sport it for jewelry so much. So none really. Yeah, it's not, it has a lot of interesting geology, but you know, the beautiful gemstones, those are usually on ancient crust. You know, the Brazilian Shield, go to Minas Gerais, you'll find all the beautiful things, or go to the Himalaya, and not so much Iceland.
Great. And then we'll probably do one last one real quick from Sue. Can you talk just a little bit more about the Arctic Circle moving?
Yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah, it is crazy.
Okay, so it's really about how you define what is the Arctic Circle. And the Arctic Circle is that place on Earth, and there's an Antarctic Circle too, where north of it, you have in the summer 24 hours of daylight, or of course you also have all night at some times of the year, right? So it's like the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn are defined by where you have 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of night. So it's the day and night are equally divided. So so it's a position relative to the sun. We think of it as a latitude, but it's not strictly a latitude. A latitude is relative to the North Pole, and it's a geographic thing. But we're talking about relative to where the sun impinges on the Earth. And since the Earth wobbles a little bit in its position relative to the sun, the North Pole isn't always pointing exactly in the same direction relative to the sun. The latitudes don't change, but that does mean the Arctic Circle changes. Hope that was clear.
Yeah, that's great. Well, are you and Des set up? We'll make sure we get a chance to do the cocktail bit before we move to the travel bit.
There is so much more about Iceland. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Was so fun putting this together.
And then Tiff says, nice to see you again, Anita, on behalf of the class of 2018.
Thank you, Tiff.
Yeah, you've got a few folks here from school, so that's wonderful. I think you guys are still working to get set up there. And then there was one other one. Oh, global warming. How is global warming, do you think, can affect the thermodynamics, the thermal energy there?
Maybe it's the other way around. How will our exploitation of energy affect global warming, right? Because you can make a green energy, like from geothermal or from hydroelectric. That is to say, energy that itself does not create CO2 emissions, which then drives global warming. But if you then use it for industries that do create CO2 emissions, right, you're doing it that way. In terms of, you know, how will global warming affect the plate tectonics? Probably not at all. You know, the Earth has been, this is not an excuse for not taking care of our planet, but the Earth has been warmer in the past. It's gone through these cycles and tectonics did not stop. So in terms of the geothermal budget, that would be fine. We'll lose some of the ice, so you're not going to have as much of the water, but there's a big ocean right nearby. So deep ocean circulation will certainly heat up and you can exploit that too.
Then we'll probably lose some coastland of Iceland as well then.
Yeah, although it's you know, it's rising, glacial rebound. As it loses glaciers, the land is rising, and so you're actually going to probably stay just fine.
Well, good. So we've got lots of time to go to
You
Iceland.
don't have to worry about
Great.
Iceland going underwater. It's not like
Good.
the Seychelles. No ice cap on the Seychelles. Okay, look
All
what
right.
we have here. Oh, we got to adjust the camera. Hi, everybody. This is Des. She's my able assistant and encourager, and she's the one who put me up to all of this anyway. Thanks, Des. It's been a blast.
My pleasure. It's really fun hearing your talk.
Here we have vodka from Emerita. Oh, you might like to know what kind of hooch do they make in Iceland? They make this vodka, which is made out of wheat, but they also make potato vodka. And that's about it. Basically, they're a Nordic tradition of distillates. And then we have blue curacao, which comes from more tropical climes, we're thinking. Curacao being a Portuguese colony down near South America. So very, very global drink here. And grenadine, which is pomegranate syrup. All right, so
we've got just, I think, about 3 minutes. So
all
I
right,
think
we're
we can
gonna
pull this off.
start. We can totally pull this off. Okay. Start with ingredient 1. All right, so just a little thought here. This is full of sugar. This has medium sugar. This has no sugar, and lots of alcohol, medium alcohol, no alcohol. Alcohol is light, sugar is dense. So this is the least dense. This is the most dense, and this is intermediate dense. And of course you can mix them, but if you pour them right, they shouldn't mix. So let us have the ice side of Iceland, the blue, the clear sky. And then let us add the ocean.
Des, do you mind tipping your camera down just a little bit so we can see the glasses a little bit better?
Yes, so important.
Perfect. Perfect. You got it.
Okay. So let's see if you can lay yours a little better than I did.
Okay, let's see. The trick is to like
Pour it
roll it down the
gently
side.
down
We
the
also
side.
have like wide glasses so that it will pour down this side easier.
And then we add the magma in the way of grenadine. Now, can you see it?
That looks great.
All right, we have the red at the bottom, the blue in the middle, the white at the top. So that makes you think magma, ocean, ice. You could float an ice cube on there and make yourself an iceberg. And the important thing about this beautiful drink is that it is the colors of the flag of Iceland, which is a blue field, which is the ocean, the red cross, which is the magma, which is surrounded by the white margins on the cross, which is the ice. And interestingly, it is the color inverse of the Norwegian flag, which it used to belong to and does no longer. Okay, so
They look gorgeous. Des
And
is
then-
layered very well.
So we are not recommending this for use at home unless you've watched at least 20 YouTube videos about fire and alcohol like we have. Are we gonna try this?
yeah, totally do it.
Okay. Even then, we don't necessarily recommend it if you have anything flammable in your house. Also,
And you fire extinguisher nearby.
so yes, key ingredient is 151 proof, some high proof alcohol. We have rum. And I have my trusty fire extinguisher as well. Important
Can I use
cocktail
this?
ingredient. Yeah,
All right,
do
go.
we need that?
Yeah, we're gonna put it in after it's burning.
Oh, whoa, okay. Anita's added a new dimension since our.
This is the ball that is the Arctic Circle. See it?
So
Here we go.
you want to like float the alcohol on top, and so you can do it off a spoon so it doesn't break the surface tension as much. You think that's enough?
That's beauty.
Okay. Do yours.
Nope. No, one's enough.
Oh, we're just doing one. Okay, just one fire. We can't handle 2. Okay. Scary.
Go.
You guys, if you stay until the end, you'll see the the outtakes
I'm
is when we
gonna
tried
scooch
this.
this in so they can see this thing flame.
Okay. When we tried this before. Okay.
Lights out.
Oh, we can see it. It looks
There.
great.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, iceberg. Oh, what?
Okay.
Oh, what? It's on fire.
The land of fire and ice.
All right.
All
Now
right,
that
all right,
is one
everybody.
amazing cocktail.
Cheers.
Good job. Okay, so while they're putting out their cocktail and the rest of you might have your cocktails on hand, we've got all sorts of hand claps going on in chat right now. This is great. We're gonna real quick run through our tours, and we're gonna running low a little bit on time, but that is all right. So we'll try to do these a little fast. And our first one we are going to talk about is a trip to Iceland with Odysseys Unlimited. It's called Exploring Iceland, and it's a land-based trip. And it is, we have two departures. We've got one that's August 27th to September 6th, and then another departure September 1st through September 11th. The difference is the first one, it's a shared departure with the University of Southern California, and the September one is an exclusive OSU departure. And yes, we do hope to get Anita on one of these two trips with us. The tour starts off in southern Iceland. Well, you'll visit the largest geothermal power plant and a bunch of other waterfalls, and then we'll move up north. And this is the full itinerary. Won't go day to day just because of time constraints, but you'll get a sense for everywhere you'll get to see. So that's, as I said, it starts off and you'll visit the Iceland's largest geothermal power plant on slopes of a volcano and visit two of Iceland's most famous waterfalls. And then also to go to a black sand beach. And this beach is lined with columnar basalt caves. And then at the end of the day, you'll even visit a famous sliding glacier. You'll have a chance to visit Vik, Iceland's southernmost town, and explore shops and have a chance to walk around. On the fourth day, you'll travel back to Reykjavik and you'll fly to what many consider Iceland's northern capital, Akureyri. And then you will visit Lake Mavatin. And this is one of the world's natural wonders. You will see boiling mud pots and mud flats and lava fields and volcanic craters. And while north, you'll visit a village known for fishing and whale watching, and even take a whale watching cruise. We'll visit huge canyons, dramatic landscapes, the famous Echo Cliffs with echoing rocks made of spiral basalt formations, and of course, Iceland's most powerful waterfall, Deltafoss. While you're up north, you'll also see Gollafoss, the waterfall of the gods. Explore the town of Akureyri and go to the Herring Era Museum. We'll continue south, passing through incredible scenery and 18th century turf houses, visit Icelandic horses, see Gabbro crater, thermal hotspots and lava fields. We'll also stop at the site of thousands, a site on a cliffside here, right here on the ocean, with thousands and thousands of cliff nesting birds. Back near Reykjavik, we'll visit the fissure that Anita talked about between the two geologic plates, North American and Eurasia. And then we'll walk along the gorge into the Rift Valley itself. The day is also filled with caves, canyons, and the great geyser, Gullfoss, the popular golden waterfall. To learn more about this trip and to view the brochure, please visit fororegonstate.org/travel. I'm actually going to show you real quick how to get there. Right here at the top on our website, fororegonstate.org, there's a Get Involved button. Click that, and then you'll see Alumni Travel on our tour calendar. You want to click either one of those, Alumni Travel or the tour calendar, and you'll eventually get to our tour calendar page where you'll see all the tours. The next trip is Viking Views and Vistas. This is a cruise with Go Next and Oceania Cruise Lines. It's a 14-night cruise aboard the Sirena. It's a 684 passenger vessel, which is considered a small to medium-sized cruise ship. It starts at $5,799, including air, and goes up depending on your room type. There is a pre-cruise option in Reykjavik and a post-cruise tour in Oslo as well. Not only went back wrong way, go the right way. So not only do you stop in Iceland, but you also visit Greenland, the Faroe Islands, Scotland, Norway, and Denmark. You'll have a few days to see at sea, to marvel at the scenery, rest and relax, and enjoy the ship amenities as well. You'll start in Reykjavik, and then on your second day, you'll go to Isfjordur. It's a very cosmopolitan town surrounded by breathtaking landscapes and one of Iceland's largest fishing centers. It is live with shops and restaurants, and you'll visit museums and tour neighboring towns. You can visit an century-old botanic garden. There's hidden villages deep within fjords. Go to waterfalls, birding, kayaking, whale watching. You know, it's a cruise, so there's all kinds of options. You can pick whichever excursion that you want to do. The ship stops at Palmjot. It's a quaint fishing village with humpback whales swimming by, and has lots of local artisans crafting sealskin mittens and coats. In Nuuk, also another stop along the tour, now in Greenland. It's the world's smallest capital city, and it sits at the tip of the peninsula of an extensive fjord system. And you have an option to take a fjord boat tour, learn about the region's history, tour around town, visit with local families. Also in Greenland, you will have the option to view the ruins of a 14th century historic Norse church, visit an agricultural research farm to discover how crops thrive in South Greenland's subarctic climate, or take a behind the scenes tour at a local tannery. No matter what you decide to do, whether walking along the shorelines or sampling Greenlandic or Inuit cuisine or visiting with local families, you won't want to forget that camera, because the area is just simply stunning. Our tour continues to the Faroe Islands and the Shetland Islands, and you'll learn about the history, the culture, the wildlife, and everything that brings these remote destinations to focus. Visit ancient Viking sites, wander at 2,000-year-old castles, learn about local fauna, photograph spectacular sea cliffs, all sorts of hidden beaches and farms and ancient castles. As we make our way to Norway, your options for adventure and wonder won't disappoint either. Learn about Viking history, Nordic walking. There is such thing as Nordic walking. Taking amazing views and learn about local history and culture. In Denmark, you could visit the Vogel Castle. It's considered Denmark's most beautiful Renaissance era castle. You could visit a German World War II bunker, go to Denmark's oldest abbey, visit a seaside artist colony, photograph historical boathouses, or even ride a trolley to the very tip of Denmark. There's options for everyone. The trip ends in Oslo, where you have the option to fly home or to stay for the post-cruise program, or even just stay on your own and do your own thing. You can find information again on for both of these tours on our website, fororegonstate.org/travel. And also, before you're heading out on any trip, whether it's for Thanksgiving holiday or beyond, please do remember to visit the U.S. government travel advisory site, travel.state.gov, and then also for the Center for Disease Control for traveling during COVID-19 pandemic. You'll definitely want to know what restrictions and precautions you need to take as you travel. So stay tuned. You can stay in touch with the travelers with our alumni group travel program on our Facebook page. You can find us at facebook.com/groups/OSUAA travel and join the conversation there as well. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I know questions were still coming in for Anita. Look, we got a class of 1984. Terry was there. And Doug sent us a message in Icelandic, so I can't read that, Doug, but I'll give that to Anita for her to read. And then also, Des, do you have that special surprise for all of us? Have you come back on camera and share your screen?
Okay, gosh, I'm not sure I want to show my face associated with this, but yeah, we're gonna do it. This is the
right.
This is the experiments.
The experiments
that led up to our perfect cocktail presentation just now.
Great.
Here we go. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a good night. Oh, wait, sound. Don't forget the sound. Dang it. I messed up.
Just reload it. It's okay. While we're waiting, we've got.
You got it? I'm gonna blow it out and drink it. All right.
Okay. Oh, man.
Good luck.
Nice one!
Right.
I was like, I used to play the flute. I'm gonna do a flute.
I wonder how hot the thing is.
Sorry, Dad.
It's a little bit warm.
How is it? Hot? Did it burn your mouth?
Kind of carbony.
It's gargling. Oh. It's like dough rising. Come on.
You could do it. It does look like fire underneath though. Look at that bottom layer.
Yeah, that actually kind of striated better. Come on.
Spin the drink. Spin the drink now.
Like, twist it.
Yeah, okay. That's good. Ooh, it's really kind of fun. Wow, there's like a nebula in there.
Honestly, it kind of looks like phytoplankton bloom
Oh, yeah, is it space or is it ocean? All right, I'm gonna slug it. It's beautiful, but also gross.
It's also totally gross. Oh.
Awesome! Broke the glass!
This is what happens.
Oh, Des and Anita, those are priceless. One of them may have noticed that they put a Mentos in the drink, and that's what made it flow over. Thank you again both for such a wonderful talk, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.